Take a measuring cup and scoop a half cup of plain rolled oats and hold it in your hand a moment. It weighs almost nothing. It cost you a few cents. You could blow it off your palm. And there is nothing about it sitting there looking gray and quiet that tells you it is doing any of the things I am about to tell you it does. But it is, and I do not think most people have any notion of what is inside that little flake. I am Solomon Esch, and before I go further, let me be plain. I am not a doctor. Nothing I tell you today treats any illness. If there is real trouble in your body that is a doctor's matter, and no video, mine included, stands in place of one. If you have been told to watch what you eat, you take what I say to the person who knows your case and you ask them first. What I am is a man who has cut oats off the field for 30 years. I have cut them in the damp of August, and I have threshed them in the dust of September, and I have put them up in 50-pound sacks in the granary. And I have watched what oats do to a body across a kitchen table for longer than I will count in this video. Today I will tell you what is in the oat, one thing at a time, and what your body does with each of them, and I will not oversell it. I have heard oats called a cure for this, and a treatment for that, and I will not add to that noise. I will tell you what is in there and what it is for. That is all. And I think you will find it is more than enough, because most of it you have never been told. I have gathered these old ways into a book over at solomesh.com. If you want it, it is there. That is the long version. That is all, why there is so much in there. Before I list one thing, understand why the oat is the way it is. Think about what that seed is for. It is not for you. It was never for you. That little seed is a complete provision for sprouting a whole new oat plant out of nothing but dirt and rain and sun. The shell holds everything the new plant needs to get up through the soil and stand on its own before it can make its own food from light. Every part that becomes leaf and stem and head and grain has to already be in there. There is no second chance and nothing arriving later. That is why the oat is as dense as it is. It is not a coincidence, and it is not a marketing claim. It is a requirement. It had to be that way or there would be no oats. Now let me walk you through the parts and watch what I say and what I do not say, because the care is the point. The soluble fiber that does the slowing. Start here because this one ought to be famous and is. There is a long rope of a molecule inside the oat called beta-glucan. It is what makes the oat slimy when you cook it for a long time, and it is what gives oatmeal that thick, sticky quality on the spoon. When you eat a bowl of oats, the beta-glucan turns into a thick gel in your stomach and in the upper part of your small intestine. And that gel does two physical things to what you just ate. It slows how fast your stomach empties, and it slows how fast sugar from the rest of the meal gets taken up through the wall of your gut into your blood. The result is that the sugar from your breakfast does not flood in all at once. It trickles in over 2 or 3 hours instead. A 2025 study from researchers in Sweden and Spain gave healthy young adults different doses of oat beta-glucan at breakfast, and then watched how their blood sugar behaved both at breakfast and at the lunch that followed. The bigger the dose, the flatter the curve, and the second meal benefit carried over into lunch. The mechanism is the viscosity of the gel. The thicker the gel, the more it blocks the sugar molecules from brushing up against the gut wall and being taken in. Now here is the part that has been studied so carefully. It is now an official health claim in Europe. The European Food Safety Authority looked at the totality of the evidence and concluded that 3 grams of oat beta-glucan a day, which is a little more than a half cup of dry rolled oats, lowers LDL cholesterol in adults with high cholesterol by somewhere between 7 and 12%. The reviews of randomized trials go back almost 30 years, and the result holds. The way the cholesterol lowering works is again the viscosity. In the gut, gel binds bile acids that your body made to digest fat and carries them out in the stool. Your liver then has to pull cholesterol out of the blood to make new bile. The blood cholesterol comes down, so a plain bowl of oatmeal in the morning is doing the same work in the upper part of you that the cholesterol pill does in a more heavy way further downstream. The mechanism starts with the slipperiness of the gel and ends with the chemistry of the liver. Two plain things to know about this. The viscosity matters. The longer the oat cooks, the more the beta-glucan dissolves and the more viscous it gets. A 2-minute microwave instant oatmeal and a 40-minute slow-cooked steel-cut oat do not do the same work. The longer and hotter the cook, the thicker the gel and the bigger the effect. And the molecular weight matters. The whole rolled oats keep more high molecular weight beta-glucan than the highly processed instant packets on the grocery shelf. The processing breaks the long chain, the unique polyphenols that almost no other grain gives you. Now I have to pause on this one because it is the part of the oat that is genuinely its own and almost no other common food has it. Inside the oat are a family of compounds called avenanthramides. They are polyphenols. They are what plant scientists call secondary metabolites, which is a fancy way of saying the plant makes them not for itself to live, but to defend itself against insects and mold, while the seed sits in the ground waiting to sprout. The oat makes around 40 different versions of these molecules. No other common grain has them in any meaningful amount. Now what the body does with them. This is where it gets interesting, and where I will be honest about how settled the science is. The careful experiments in cells and in mice for years have shown that avenanthramides calm an inflammation pathway in the body called NF-kappa B. When that pathway is too loud, the body makes too many of the chemical messengers of inflammation. The oat polyphenols quiet them. The 2018 review of the work pulled together what was known and concluded the avenanthramides do in fact lower markers of oxidative stress and lower the production of cytokines like IL-6 and IL-8 in laboratory models. And there is the blood vessel side. The lining of every blood vessel in your body makes a gas called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what tells the muscle wall of the vessel to relax and open up. When the lining is healthy, the nitric oxide flows and the vessel stays wide. When the lining is inflamed, the nitric oxide falls and the vessels stiffen. The oat polyphenols have been shown in cell studies to support nitric oxide production and to protect the cells of the vessel wall from inflammation damage. A small human study in 2018 gave older adults an oat avenanthamide extract and looked at markers of blood vessel function and saw a small but real improvement. So here is what I will say and what I will not say. I will not tell you oats open up your arteries. I will not tell you they cure inflammation. I will tell you that the oat carries a class of plant compound that no other grain carries in any real amount. And that the careful laboratory and the small early human work is consistent with what the dairy farmers here call a steady quiet being inside a body, not a flash of new. The mineral that moves the sugar inside you, magnesium. Take this one next because most people do not know how much of their body's work runs on magnesium. Magnesium is a cofactor for over 300 enzymes in your body. It sits in the middle of the chemistry and helps it happen. The enzymes that move sugar inside your cells, that run insulin signaling, that make ATP in the mitochondria, almost all of them have magnesium sitting in the active site. When magnesium is short in the diet, the cells become a little less sensitive to insulin. The door for sugar becomes a little slower to open. A study of more than 8,000 women followed for years, published in Diabetes Care in 2004, found that the women who ate the most magnesium in their diet had a meaningfully lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes than the women who ate the least. The mechanism lined up. The mineral matters. A plain bowl of oats gives you about a sixth of what most adults need in a day. That is not enough to fix a deficiency by itself. It is enough to nudge the body in the right direction. And the nudge is built into the work the oat is already doing in your gut with the soluble fiber and the polyphenols. The B vitamins that go along with the oats. Oats carry a quiet line of B vitamins. Thiamine, which is vitamin B1, and folate, which is vitamin B9. These are not things you will hear spoken of in the oat conversation much, because the internet would rather sell you a pill than tell you there is folate in your breakfast. But there is. The thiamine is what your body uses to turn carbohydrate into energy. Folate is what your body uses to build DNA and to run the chemistry that clears homocysteine out of the blood, which is a small thing your blood vessels care about. The amount of these vitamins in a bowl of oats is not huge. The vitamins are the supporting cast. Magnesium and the soluble fiber are the lead actors. But the cast is on the stage when you eat them, and you will not need a separate pill. The part of the oat that feeds the good bugs in you. Now this is the most interesting part to physiology, and the part I want to be most careful about, because it is the newest. Inside the oat, the same soluble fiber that slowed your stomach emptying also survives past the small intestine and arrives in your colon. In the colon, the bacteria that live there, the ones that line your gut and weigh about as much as your brain, take that fiber and ferment it. They cannot fully digest it. They break it into smaller pieces, and the smaller pieces are a class of molecules called short-chain fatty acids. The main one is butyrate. There is also propionate and acetate. These short-chain fatty acids do work in the colon. They are the main food of the cells that line the colon wall. They keep that wall healthy. They lower the inflammation in the colon. They cross back into the blood and act as chemical messengers in other parts of the body. They are tied to lower inflammation markers in the blood and to better insulin sensitivity in the liver. The 2005 experiment in the British Journal of Nutrition put groups of rats on different oat-based diets and watched what their gut bacteria did. The oat-fed rats had more of the friendly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium in their stool and fewer of the unfriendly bacteria. Their short-chain fatty acids went up. Their blood lipids went down. The fiber as a food source for the gut bugs is what makes the chain work so. When you eat a bowl of oats in the morning, you are not only feeding yourself. You are feeding the trillions of bacteria that line your gut. And what you feed them determines what they make, and what they make determines a great deal of how you feel by the afternoon. This is one reason a plain bowl of oats can settle a person who has been troubled by irregular digestion. Not because the oat is a medicine for the gut, but because it is a steady food for the right bugs in the right place, what the plant defense does for you. The oat also carries compounds called adenosines. These are saponins. The plant puts them in its roots to defend itself from fungal disease in the soil. The saponins have a soap-like quality. In your gut, they appear to have a mild anti-inflammatory effect, and they may help the immune system stay in balance. The evidence here is mostly in laboratory work, and not yet strong enough that I would make a strong claim. But the saponins are real, and they are in the oat, and the body sees them. The honest caveats I owe you because honesty is the whole of this channel. Now I have to give you two honest cautions about plain oats. The first is about a protein in the oat called avenin. The second is about a compound called phytic acid. The avenin caution is this. Oats are grown in rotation with wheat and barley. The harvesting equipment and the bins and the trucks are shared. Studies have measured the gluten contamination of commercial oat products, and the numbers vary wildly, from 1% up to 88%, depending on the brand and the lot. For most people, this is of no matter. For people with celiac disease or with a serious wheat sensitivity, it can be a problem. The avenin protein of the oat itself is different from the gliadin of wheat, and most celiac patients tolerate pure uncontaminated oats. But the contamination is the catch. So, if wheat or gluten is a serious matter for you, this is one to bring to your doctor. The phytic acid caution is this. The oat carries phytic acid in its bran. The phytic acid is the storage form of phosphorus in the seed. It binds minerals tightly. It binds iron, zinc, calcium, magnesium in the gut before your body can take them up. Studies going back to the 1980s in the Journal of Nutrition and British Journal of Nutrition showed that zinc absorption from a meal based on oats is meaningfully lower than from a meal based on meat, in part because of the phytic acid. This sounds like bad news. It is not. It is honest news, and the old way of eating handled it. The plain old practice was to soak oats overnight in water with a little yogurt or a little vinegar or a spoonful of sourdough starter. The overnight soak lets an enzyme called phytase, present in the oat itself and increased by the friendly bacteria, break the phytic acid down. The minerals then come free. Studies have shown that this practice and the practice of malting and sprouting the oats before milling reduces the phytic acid dramatically and improves the absorption of zinc and iron. Long, slow-cooked oatmeal does the same work. The old folks knew to soak or to slow cook. They did not call it reducing phytic acid. They called it letting it sit the night through, and the chemistry lines up with what they did. The what you will actually notice. Now what happens if you eat a plain bowl of oats every morning? Let me separate what you will feel from what you will not feel, because they are different, and I do not want you hunting for something you will never find. The first thing you will notice inside a week is your mid-morning. The oats in your stomach empty slower than the sweet cereal or the white toast. The beta-glucan gel holds on. By 10 in the morning, you are not hollow. You are not reaching. The 2025 study I mentioned earlier showed that the oats improved glucose tolerance, not only at breakfast, but at the lunch that followed. The second meal effect. Your body remembers what you fed it earlier. A bowl of oats in the morning sets the rhythm of the day in a way a bowl of cornflakes does not. The most people eat a breakfast that is gone from them by 10, and whatever they reach for at 10 is worse than what they would have chosen sitting at a table. A bowl of oats is still doing work in your gut at 10. The second thing you will not feel at all, and I say so plainly that you are not disappointed. If you were short of magnesium, the oats are not short of magnesium anymore. If your gut bacteria were out of balance, they are not so out of balance anymore. If your LDL cholesterol was creeping up, it is not creeping so fast. Those are gaps being filled. There is no morning you wake and feel your LDL falling. The point of a gap being filled is that nothing happens where something used to. The third thing nobody skips. It is cheap. There is nothing else on that shelf giving you what oats give you for what oats cost you. A good food a working family can afford every day forever is worth more than a wonder food they can afford for a month. What my grandmother did with a pot of oats. Let me tell you how I know none of this was ever a secret. My grandmother would not have understood a word of what I just said. Of an anthramide, none of it. She would have thought the whole conversation foolish. But she knew what the oat was. When somebody in that house was tired in a way that rest would not fix. When a child had been sick, and the appetite was not back. When a man came in off the field and the morning was still in his bones, the pot came out. I can see her at the stove with the wooden ladle. The oats had been soaked the night before. She cooked them low and slow for nearly an hour. The kitchen smelled of it. And she put the bowl in a person's hands and stood there until they ate it. She never explained herself. Everyone in that kitchen knew what she was doing. She was giving them the slowest thing in the house, the thing that sustained you through the morning and did not let go of you by 10. She had a full kitchen, bread and eggs and bacon and preserves, and the cellar full of everything she had put up through the year. And when somebody was truly low and she wanted to put something back into them, she reached past all of it. She reached for the oats. Nobody taught her from a book. She had it from her mother, who had it from hers. Not one of those women could have told you what beta-glucan was. Every one of them knew where the steadiness was. Who gains from you not knowing this? The word. About why you have never heard most of what I just told you. There is no villain here, and I will not invent one. Nobody sat in a room and agreed to keep evenanthromides a secret. It is worse than that in a way, because it is a system nobody has to coordinate. There is no money in a plain food. Nobody owns the oat. Nobody can put a patent on it. There is no profit in a man telling you that a few cents worth of oat is one of the most complete things you can eat, because you hear it once, it costs you nothing, and then you are done with him forever. But a bottle can be sold, and a bottle can be sold again next month. So there is a great deal of noise about powders and capsules, and remarkably little about the oat. Not because the oat is worse. Because the oat cannot be sold to you twice. There is no scheme. The money simply runs one way, and everything drifts behind it without anybody needing to push. What I would have you do. Here is what I ask, and it is small. For the next 2 weeks, eat a plain bowl of oats in the morning. The plain rolled kind or the steel-cut kind. Not the little sugar pouches in the bright box with the dried fruit and the brown sugar crystals in them. Cook them slow if you have the time. Soak them the night before if you remember. Cook them with water and a pinch of salt, and if you want, a little milk at the end, and a small handful of walnuts or a spoonful of plain yogurt. Do not count anything. Do not keep a chart. Do not make it a discipline, because disciplines fail. Just eat the oats and get on with your day. And pay attention to one thing only. Pay attention to 10 in the morning. That is the whole test. Notice whether you are hollow at 10 the way you used to be, or whether you are not. Notice whether your hand goes looking for something or stays where it is. You will have your answer inside a week, and it will not be an answer anybody had to sell you. Then come down to the comments and tell me plainly what happened. And I want the real answer, not the flattering one. If it did nothing for you, say so, and I will take that just as seriously. And tell me one more thing, because I am curious. Of everything I listed today, which one had you never heard of before? I have a suspicion it will be the avenanthromide, and I would like to know whether I am right, because if I am, then the most unique thing in that oat is the thing nobody ever bothered to tell you about, the what comes next. Next time I want to talk about how we cut oats on this farm and how we keep the bug out of the bin through the damp of August, because the small farmer in this country is fighting a losing fight against the big miller on the price, and I want to tell you what we are doing about it. But that is the next video. For today, hold on to the plain thing. That oat seed is a complete provision. Everything a living plant needs to push up out of nothing had to be sealed inside that husk in advance, because nothing was coming later. That is why it is as rich as it is. And it is sitting in your pantry right now costing a few cents, and it is one of the most studied and most powerful things you can put on a breakfast table. And remember that I am not a doctor, and I have not told you today how to treat anything. If something is wrong in your body that is a doctor's matter, and you go and see one, and you do not let a video, mine or anyone's, stand between you and that, Take good care of yourselves, and take good care of the ones at your table. The people who built this country with their hands knew that.